Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always. What are we digging into today?
Well, a lot of you have been asking about the diamond market, specifically about what's going on in China and all that stuff with De Beers slashing prices. So we've been digging into all those articles and reports you sent.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot, and it's way more complicated than it seems at first glance.
It really is. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking economic shifts, changing cultural values, and some serious disruption happening in the diamond world itself. But before we get into all of that, one thing really jumped out at me.
Okay, what's that?
Marriage rates in China, they're plummeting, like seriously dropping.
Yeah.
And you know what that means for diamonds?
It's a big deal. Huge implications.
Right, because for so long, especially in China, diamonds have been like the symbol of marriage, right? That classic engagement ring.
Exactly. If fewer people are getting married, that traditional demand for diamonds just isn't there like it used to be. Yeah, and to add to that, China's economy is going through a bit of a slowdown, to put it mildly.
It's definitely having an impact on luxury spending, which includes diamonds, of course.
One report said that luxury spending in China is down by like 15% this year. That's a lot.
It is. And it's not just limited to China either. When a major economy like China slows down, it ripples through the global diamond trade.
All connected, huh?
It really is. And, it gets even more interesting when you think about how diamonds are marketed. They're all about everlasting love, right? But what happens when ideas about love and marriage themselves are changing, especially in a key market like China?
Yeah, makes you wonder how the diamond industry is going to adapt to that.
It's a big question. And then on top of all that, we've got this whole other trend happening. Lab-grown diamonds.
Oh, yeah, those are getting super popular in China, aren't they?
They really are. And for a few reasons. I mean, they're seen as more affordable and ethical, which is appealing to a lot of people, especially younger consumers.
It's like, kind of reminds me of what happened with plant-based burgers. Suddenly, there's this alternative that's appealing to a whole new generation.
It's a great comparison, actually. And then you have the price difference, which is huge.
Oh, yeah, lab-grown diamonds can be so much cheaper than natural diamonds.
Significantly cheaper. And for a lot of people, especially those on a budget, that's a major deciding factor.
Speaking of prices, have you seen what De Beers is doing? They just slashed prices by like 10 to 15%.
Oh, yeah, that was big news.
I mean, that's pretty unheard of for them, right? It makes you wonder if they're starting to sweat a little with all these changes happening.
I think it's definitely a sign that they're reacting to some powerful market forces.
Yeah.
Weak global demand, the rise of lab-grown diamonds, and they've got this massive stockpile of diamonds they need to sell.
Yeah, they're not calling the shots anymore, are they?
Not like they used to. They're being forced to adapt.
Wow. So we've got economic uncertainty, changing ideas about love and marriage, this rise of lab-grown diamonds, and now De Beers making these big moves.
It's a lot to keep track of. It's a really fascinating time for the diamond market.
No kidding. So for anyone out there thinking about buying a diamond, this is all pretty important stuff, right?
Definitely. It's a whole different market than it was even a few years ago.
Yeah. Where do you even start?
Well, I think you have to start by figuring out what matters most to you. What are your priorities? Do you want a natural diamond, even with the higher price tag? Or are you open to a lab-grown diamond?
Right. Both options have their pros and cons.
They do. And with De Beers cutting prices, natural diamonds might be tempting if you've always dreamed of having one.
But on the flip side, lab-grown diamonds offer a lot of value and, maybe even some peace of mind, ethically speaking.
It's a tough choice.
Yeah.
And that's why understanding what's happening in the market is so important. It helps you make a decision that's right for you.
Exactly. It's all about being informed, right?
Absolutely.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still so much more to explore.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
What do you say we dive a little deeper into what's happening within China's diamond industry itself?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right, so we've talked about how that economic slowdown in China is impacting luxury spending, but what about the diamond industry inside China? What's the situation on the ground there?
Well, it's facing its own unique challenges for sure. One of the biggest is a demographic shift. Younger generations, those millennials and Gen Z, they're just not as interested in traditional diamond jewelry as their parents were.
Interesting. So it's almost like diamonds are losing a bit of their status, their wow factor.
You could say that.
Yeah.
They're not seen as the must-have status symbol they once were. These younger consumers are looking for something different. They're more individualistic, and they tend to value experiences over material possessions.
Yeah, and let's be real, younger people usually have tighter budgets too. So it makes sense that lab-grown diamonds, which are, generally more affordable, are really gaining traction with them.
Exactly. Price is a big factor for sure. But beyond that, there are regulatory things to consider too, like the Chinese government's policies, on diamond imports, marketing restrictions, all of that. It can really impact the industry.
So even if China's economy bounces back, the diamond industry still has to deal with all these other hurdles, right? Changing tastes, ethical concerns, government regulations. It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to navigate. And then there's the big question mark. How will De Beers price cuts play out long term?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is this a smart move or a desperate one? Will it actually help sales or could it backfire?
It's a gamble for sure. If diamond prices keep dropping, it could hurt their image. Like, if they're not seen as valuable and exclusive anymore, will people still want them as much?
That makes sense. If diamonds are always on sale, do they still feel special? Does it, tarnish the sparkle a little bit?
It's a fine line they're walking. They need to boost demand without making their product seem less desirable. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
So, what's the outlook then? I mean, what do the reports say about the future of China's diamond market? Any chance of a rebound?
It's tough to say for sure. A lot depends on how those key factors we discussed shake out. If China's economy recovers strongly, that could definitely help. People would feel more confident about spending money again.
Fingers crossed for a strong recovery.
But even then, the diamond industry can't just sit around and wait. They need to get creative, adapt to those changing consumer preferences we talked about.
Okay, so what does that look like for them? Are we talking new marketing campaigns, different diamond designs? What needs to change?
I think it's going to be all of the above, really. They need to connect with younger generations, find new ways to emphasize that emotional value of diamonds, and of course, make sure they're sourcing them ethically and sustainably. It's a lot to tackle.
It is. And if they don't evolve, they risk being left behind, right?
Yeah.
Especially with lab-grown diamonds becoming more and more popular.
Absolutely. It's a pivotal moment for the industry. Adapt or become obsolete, that's kind of where they're at.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the challenges facing China's diamond industry, but let's go back to something we touched on earlier, that declining marriage rate. How much is that really affecting the diamond market?
Oh, it's a big factor. Huge. Especially when it comes to engagement rings. Traditionally, engagement rings have driven a huge chunk of diamond sales, particularly in China. A diamond ring is expected as part of a proposal.
Right. So fewer marriages equal fewer engagement rings, which means
Lower demand for diamonds overall. Seems
Mhm.
pretty simple, but the impact is significant. I mean, for decades, the whole diamond industry has relied on that connection to love in marriage.
And now that connection is, well, it's weakening, at least in China. It makes you wonder if that trend spreads to other parts of the world, what happens then?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. If marriage rates keep falling globally, the diamond industry is going to need to rethink its whole approach to marketing and positioning diamonds, completely rethink things.
Almost like they need a new story for diamonds, right? If it's not all about everlasting love and marriage anymore, then what is it about?
That's the big question they need to answer. And fast.
All right, so in this part, we've covered the challenges within China's diamond industry, the impact of that falling marriage rate, and
Yeah, we've looked at those economic trends, the changes in taste, and the impact of new technologies. It's complicated, but it's exciting to analyze.
for sure. And we're not done yet. In part 3, we're going to look at something that's becoming more and more important to people, the ethical side of diamonds, both natural and lab-grown.
Exactly. We'll dive into those environmental and social impacts of mining, and we'll look at the sustainability claims of those lab-grown diamonds. Let's unpack there.
All right, get ready to dig deeper into sparkle, everyone. It's about to get really interesting. All right, we've talked economics, we've talked trends, we've looked at what's happening in China, but there's one more big piece of the diamond puzzle we haven't really touched on yet.
Ethics. It's a big one, and honestly, I think it's becoming the most important factor for a lot of people these days. When they buy a diamond, they want to know, where did this come from? What was the impact?
Yeah, it's not just about sparkle anymore, is it?
Nope, not at all. Consumers are way more aware, way more conscious about the impact of their purchases, and they're asking some tough questions, especially about diamonds.
Especially about diamonds. I mean, for a long time, there's been this shadow hanging over the diamond industry, right? Concerns about mining practices, environmental damage, conflict.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all seen those images, right? Huge mines, sometimes in really vulnerable places, and it's hard to connect that image with a beautiful diamond in a jewelry store.
Yeah, there's a big disconnect there. And the reports you sent, some of those really highlighted those concerns, deforestation, habitat loss, water pollution, even human rights abuses in some cases. It's heavy stuff.
It is. And I think the push for ethical consumption has finally really reached the diamond world. People are waking up to those issues, and they want more transparency. They want to know the real story behind their diamond.
And this is where those lab-grown diamonds come in, right? Because they're often presented as the ethical alternative.
Exactly. No mining, so you automatically eliminate a lot of those environmental and social risks. At least that's the idea.
But it can't be that simple, right? I mean, those labs still use energy resources.
Right, they do. So it's not a completely zero impact situation, not by a long shot. There are still questions to ask, things to consider about the sustainability of lab-grown diamonds.
So it's not really about like natural versus lab grown then, is it? It's about looking deeper, regardless of where your diamond comes from.
100%. And this is where the consumer has so much power. By asking questions, by doing their research, by supporting companies that align with their values, they can push the whole industry in a better direction.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground in these three parts. What are the big takeaways? What do people really need to remember when it comes to diamonds these days?
Well, first off, remember the market's changing fast. All those economic shifts, the trends we talked about, the new technologies, it's all creating a very different landscape than we saw even a few years ago. So be aware of that. Do your research.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame. Traditional ideas about diamonds, about what's valuable, what's a good investment, all of that's in flux. And even De Beers, the biggest name in the game, they're having to scramble to keep up. So that's the first thing. Right?
Yep. And second, be an informed consumer. You have more choices than ever before, so really think about what's important to you. Do your homework. Ask those questions about where a diamond came from, about the practices of the company that's selling it. Do you want a natural diamond? A lab-grown diamond? What are your priorities?
Because there's no one right answer, is there? It's all about making the choice that feels best for you.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to. The diamond industry, it's really at a crossroads. Will it cling to those old traditions and risk being left behind? Or will it adapt, will it evolve, and create a future for diamonds that's ethical, sustainable, and really speaks to what people care about? That's the big question.
That's a great question. And honestly, I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. It's going to be fascinating.
Me too. It's a
Yeah.
story that's still being written, right? And who knows, maybe the next status symbol won't be about how big or rare your diamond is. Maybe it'll be about the story behind it, about knowing it came from a responsible source that represents those values you care about. That's kind of cool to think about.
That's a great thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the diamond world, everybody. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and choose your sparkle wisely. We'll see you next time.